An idiot on this show, Gab, said that Borough would be bottom of the league.
48 hours after that tweet, I stand by every single word.
Mild concern.
Erik ten Hag has been sacked by Leverkusen, which is just a couple of games into the season. So it is possible for clubs to do that.
I wouldn't sack Ruben Selles if I was in the Sheffield United board's position.
Obviously, Ollie's very emotional about this.
It is just pathetic what we're seeing week in, week out.
Is that justification to sack a manager after 4 games? Hello guys and welcome back to The Sportsman Untitled. I'm delighted to be back on the show and we've got a superstar panel for you today. Brought with you Gab Sutton back on the show as always, and of course Ollie Mann. How are you doing, Ollie? Welcome.
Yeah, doing all right. Thank you very much, Simon. Obviously, the football's not going great, but I think we'll be coming back to that one a little bit later, won't we? So I'll save the anger because it's coming.
Part 2 will be focusing on Sheffield United, who of course are pointless and bottom of the league in the Championship.
That's what Sheffield Wednesday fans say.
But first, let's talk about some of the weekend's action. We're going to look at Millwall 0, Wrexham 2 to start off with, Gab. Wrexham's first league win. Deserve credit for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think lots is made of Wrexham's financial power, and obviously that's been a huge factor for them. But I think I wanted to pick out Max Cleworth when it comes to Wrexham, because he's somebody who's really been part of their journey. When they got promoted from the National League in 2023, he was sort of expected to be loaned out, in favour of maybe more experienced centre-halves. And actually that season he made his place his own in the team because of his mobility and ball-playing ability on the right of that back three, and he's kind of grown with the club, and I think that it's really important to recognise that they can have players. Ryan Barnett might be a similar example, players who have grown with the club and gone with it, and I think Max Cleworth deserves huge credit, and a big result, first win of the season for them.
It's such a difficult place to win at, isn't it? The Den, you see that result, quite eye-catching on paper, I think. I'm still slightly concerned about their defensive issues, Wrexham. Yeah. And of course, we're recording this on transfer deadline day, so they could go out and spend 20 million and solve all those issues. A bit disappointed with Millwall, though, losing the same game, right?
Yeah, completely. And obviously that's 2 out of 2 for them at home now, isn't it? Having sort of collapsed in the second half against Middlesbrough as well. So there'll be some really concerning signs for them, particularly what's happening at the Den. But obviously their away form since the change in manager has just been outstanding. They seem to be, I think it's 1.6 points per game they've got since Alex Neil's come into the club. And so we saw that ourselves at Bramall Lane. Not that beating United's up to shout about at the minute, but obviously we've seen a lot from them in terms of their away games. It's almost like a flip of what you would expect from the traditional Millwall and the way they're taking it forwards. I think it'll be really interesting though, just on Wrexham again, you talked there about some of the players coming through the divisions with them. Obviously they've brought in Danny Ward, who they clearly have spent money on, wanted to put in straight as a number 1. Arthur Okonkwo, for me, the better goalkeeper. Yeah. I think that injury, obviously you never want to see somebody getting injured, but with the defensive issues they've got, I think Okonkwo coming back in as their number 1, he's going to be huge for them. I think that will settle them down, and I just think he's a much better option for them in goal at the moment, so that could be a blessing in disguise.
I actually completely agree with you. Did you see Danny Ward was in Mackey's after the game with his arm in a sling? Because that's how you respond to an injury like that. I'm a bit worried about them defensively, as I already touched upon though, Gab. In terms of XG, they've conceded the most XG in the league per 90 this season, 2.21. They lost the XG battle 1.96 to 0.53 in this game. How do they address those issues so they can start picking up more points moving forward? I
think today I would be looking to bring in a aerially dominant centre-half. I think for their style of play, that's probably what they needed. It might even help them, for attacking set pieces as well. They've signed Connor Cody, which is a great signing in terms of experience and pedigree. You think of, somebody who started regularly for Wolves in the Premier League not too long ago. So in terms of pedigree and profile, you wouldn't argue with that. But
Callum Doyle as well.
They have signed Callum Doyle as well, which again I think is a brilliant signing. I think he's a huge talent and a lovely investment for them. But I would just maybe think for that middle centre half, someone who's a real powerhouse, a bit like Harry Souttar, who Sheffield United had. I've broken Ollie's heart there. Somebody in that mould I think Wrexham could do with to fix their defensive issues. So time is of the essence for them.
Great to have them up and running with 3 points though, of course. Next I want to focus on Stoke 0, West Brom 1, Ollie. Stoke's winning run come to an end, and it was a rare Victor Johansson error. When do we ever see these?
No, that's not a thing that happens. I refuse to accept it was his fault. Somebody else must have also been to blame, because Victor Johansson, you rely on him so much and you expect so much better from him than seeing these kind of mistakes that are coming through. He is is still, for me, obviously one of the best keepers in the league, so it's just bizarre to see that coming. But obviously, fantastic for West Brom, and great to see them sort of getting up, getting themselves going. I think that centre-back partnership now, obviously, I was worried when they were losing Hegem. Obviously, he's been a fantastic player for them. He seems like a real talent for the level. But bringing in Mepham just gives them that completely solid, you can almost just continue exactly where Hegem left off. And I really like that new partnership for them. I think it's huge in terms of giving them a better base to build from. And I think looking at some of the teams who are struggling so far this season, teams like West Brom might start to think that this is a real opportunity for them, aiming for that top 6, and that recruitment just makes them so much better.
I'm delighted for Ryan Mason as well. It feels like, obviously, it's a big first job for him, and it's just really takes the pressure off that he's got off to such a good start. They're up to second now, and I've been really impressed with them as well, guys. Yeah,
me too. I think what I like about Ryan Mason is he's clearly a bright coach with some innovative ideas, but he's also gone in with a clear understanding of what the level demands and all of the pragmatic side, which is, I think, extremely important. You know, we'll come on to the issues at Bramall Lane, but it shows you need to balance the innovation with a bit of pragmatism. And I think the fact that Ryan Mason and the recruitment at West Brom have brought in Nat Phillips, they brought in Chris Mepham, who's an experienced Championship defender. They've signed down a Hegebo who brings some physicality up top. They've got that really nice balance. And this isn't an easy time to manage West Brom. This isn't a time where they're one of the promotion favourites. This is a time where they're actually cutting back a little bit. They're dealing with some of the mistakes of a previous era. The budget sort of paying the costs for that. They've sold Tom Fellows to Southampton for £10 million when, in different circumstances, they might have held out for more than that. So not easy time to manage West Brom, but it's been a fantastic start for him.
Later on in the show as well, we're going to talk about some of the key transfers so far in the Championship. I think Sorba Thomas is right up there, though. I mean, I was really impressed with Stoke in this game anyway, even though they lost. And I think the positivity you can feel around that club now. I didn't think Mark Robbins would start to work his magic so soon, really. They've been brilliant so far this season. Fantastic.
And I know pre-season we always do this thing. Me and Gab did our 1-24s, and I was sat there, you just can't trust Stoke. I like the manager, I like the signings, the squad looks pretty good now on paper, but it just feels like that always seems to go wrong for Stoke. But a quick start to the season, positivity coming from the fans, from the squad, from the manager, from the board. It feels like they could be a club that sort of steamroll a little bit. Once they start to feel positivity, once it starts to go right, they could really start to get that. And I love that partnership. I love Sorba Thomas, the way that obviously he can whip the ball into the box, the way that he just almost brings something completely different that they've been missing a little bit, with then Mabama up front, and he just looks like such a talent coming into the division. Obviously, we've not seen loads of him, particularly at this level previously, but he just looks like somebody who is ready to kick on, to announce himself, and to be one of those players in the Championship that just really takes us by storm a little bit coming down to the division.
And he came so close to equalising Mababa as well, didn't he? Hit the post. Next game we'll talk about, Gab, is Ipswich 2, Derby 2. Ipswich nearly losing at home there. A late Jack Clark penalty just saving the day for them. Are you concerned a bit? We all had them, I think, as pre-season favourites and ready to steamroll the division. It's not quite worked out so far for them.
Yeah, I think mild concern combined with a healthy dollop of patience is kind of the overwhelming vibe at Portman Road. From a personal outside point of view, I'm willing to give them another segment of the season, if you like, between now and the next international break in October. I expect them to be improved. I think individually, I think they've actually got a much better squad than the one that won back-to-back promotions to the Premier League. It's just about finding that dynamic. So, for instance, I think Jayden Philogene is a better left winger than Nathan Broadhead if you were going player for player. However, Nathan Broadhead had a relationship with Leif Davis. He had a relationship with Connor Chaplin. And I think it's that dynamic, that synergy that Kieran McKenna might just take a bit of time to re-establish. But I think it'll come.
I think as well with Ipswich, it's such an interesting time for them at the moment. But coming down, obviously, I think maybe the morale's struggling a little bit. You can see that in terms of the confidence of the players. Like XG wise, they are looking quite good. They're creating chances. Their conversion rate is amongst the lowest in the division. That's what they've got to try and get right. They've also, got to find a way to get the ball in the back of the net. However, if the ref just says play till you score, you're usually going to be all right, and maybe that's what will come for them for the rest of the season.
I think, Gab, you're almost right in the fact that they've got so many options now, and obviously the new signings and players that have gone out, it's almost going to take a bit of time for them to find that winning formula when they've got so many forward options, as you mentioned in particular. Word on Derby as well, I think another impressive away performance, unfortunate to lose, but they look quite good going forward in this game, I think.
Yeah, they're such a weird team, Derby, because I expected them to be solid at the back and quite toothless going forwards. I thought that was going to be the way that they were kind of set up. Particularly, obviously, we've seen so much from Eustace in the past in terms of his Birmingham team. He sets up pragmatically. He wants them to be hard to beat. He wants to stifle games. And we did see that to an extent here. Obviously, they stifled the game. They tried to shut it down. They tried to make sure that they were as solid as possible. But I just didn't see the goals coming. I just did not see that they were going to be almost the flip of what I expected at the start of the season. They're conceding goals for fun. Obviously, you'll have seen that yourself. But more so than that, they've also been able to score goals, create chances. That stands them in fantastic stead if they can sort out some of those defensive issues that are starting to creep in. It may be that as we go through the season, Eustace tries to transition them back into just being a little bit more steady, because it's a lot of goals conceded so far, albeit that it's sort of trade-off with the goals that they're scoring as well.
Carl Morris, fantastic start to the season as well in terms of goals at Derby. Gav, wanted to open this question up to you in terms of the relegated teams and, of course, the other team with a parachute payment. Leicester are up in 4th. I think it's Ipswich in 20th, Southampton in 13th, Sheffield United bottom. We're only 4 games in and we all know that August is a difficult time, but I don't think we expected quite a slow start for all of them. Do you have any reasoning behind that?
I think I do have a theory that clubs coming down from the Premier League take a little bit longer to hit top gear, even if their top gear tends to be higher than the rest if they get it right. And I think we're seeing that. I think that the rumours over transfer dealings tend to take longer for clubs that have come down from the Premier League, because there's players that Premier League clubs want and their window tends to go a bit later, I would say. And so there's all that little bit of uncertainty and they can be more active later in the window. Like we're seeing with Southampton, for instance, they cashed in on Mateus Fernandes and all of a sudden they're doing deals for Tom Fellows and Finn Azaz, etc. The fullback they signed as well. So I think, I a little bit like what I mentioned with Ipswich, let's give it September and see how they're doing between now and the next international break in October, because I think things will have settled down for all three of them. Well, certainly for Ipswich and Southampton.
Patience certainly the key, but it does feel like a little more open this season. Usually we set our clock by it, top 2 positions in the Championship, stick 2 Premier League teams in there, you probably won't be far off. Are the autos open this year?
I think it's open, For me, they are 100%. It looks like it's going to be a lot more open this season than maybe we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think Ipswich, coming down, I expected them to have prepared better for this. And I know, you're always going to have a slow start. Sometimes, like I said before, the morale, that kind of momentum of the club takes a little bit of time to turn around. But it feels to me as though they just weren't fully prepared coming down into the Championship. Some of the challenge that they're starting to see, such as the Derby game, where they're sticking men behind the ball, they're time wasting, they're trying to keep the ball out of play. How are you going to break that down? What are you going to do to combat that? And they just don't seem fully prepared for those kind of challenges. Now, I'm sure it will come through the season. I think Ipswich are still the favourites, and I think probably that's still right. But I think this is so open compared to what we've seen previously. I think Borough, I think West Brom, I think Coventry. There are teams here now who have got a massive opportunity where this isn't going to be 100 points. You've not got to chase down a team who come in with a massive advantage and win every single week. You're going to be chasing down that kind of high 80s, low 90s. There's an opportunity there for teams who are just ready to take that next step, who are settled and who have made a good start. That can carry you a long way. I think there's a massive opportunity, because I think where I'd written off 4 places in the playoffs, I certainly think at least 2 of those are now up for grabs.
Especially when you consider that Leicester have had the best start and are on 9 points, might actually be on no points if they get that points deduction that we're still waiting on, Gab. Right, it's time to touch on Borough versus Sheffield United before we move on to our Sheffield United deep dive. 4 wins in a row for Middlesbrough. 4 wins in a row for Rob Edwards, and an idiot on this show, Gab, said that Borough would be bottom of the league. Who was that? Hey, who was that? Why is he still on this show? I thought that Borough would really struggle at the start of this season, right? Because of the fixtures they had.
Yeah.
What's Rob Edwards got right? And Adi Vivash as well deserves credit.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the combination between the two of them, I think they've got a lovely blend of qualities, with Rob Edwards' man management qualities and Vivash's coaching on the grass and that sort of combination. I think from Middlesbrough, I think they've recruited really well, first and foremost. They've signed Alfie Jones, who's been a very reliable player at this level with Hull City in defence. They've signed Callum Britton, who's a real specialist wing back, which is really important for the way that Rob Edwards' teams likes to play. And I think there's one or two others that Ollie would kind of touch on. That there's a lad on loan from Manchester City as well.
Yeah, Sverre is a fantastic addition to that squad. I mean, for anybody who's obviously been following some of those sort of lesser European leagues, looking at some of those potential...
You've been playing Football Manager.
I've been playing Football Manager, Simon.
Looking at some of those unknown European
Yeah, you've got to look at some of those unknown European leagues. It's Football Manager and everybody knows it. But you know what? Sometimes it tells you where they're coming. Sverre looks like one of those who is definitely going right to the top of the game. It 100% would not shock me if he's starting for Manchester City in sort of 18 months' time. That's the development and the opportunity and the potential that you've got with a player of that calibre. I've seen him obviously now in the flesh where we've played against them, and he just looks a class above. I think he's going to be one of the best players in the division this season. I think he will, by the end, come next May, we will be talking about him as an absolute superstar at championship level that most of us go, can you believe he played in the Championship? That is mad. I think the same, Sonja Hansen is a little bit older, but I think he's another one who's got a huge upside. We saw both the good and bad, I would say, of him at the Riverside on Saturday, where he's a player who, technically with the ball at his feet, looks solid. He can get in between players. He's quite good at the quick interplay. He looks really important to the press, but he's just a little bit wakeful and at times a little bit weak. When somebody was coming in through the back of him, he needs to toughen up to really get up to the speed and the level that he needs to be at for the Championship. But he's another one who could be a really exciting player for Borough. In terms of what they're getting right, I think there's a really easy answer here, and I'll include a little dig at the same time at my own team. It turns out that you don't just have to say, oh, this is how I play, and it doesn't matter how deficient my squad is, it doesn't matter that we've not got the players for it. Instead, we're just going to actually play something that suits the team. We're going to hide the weaknesses that we've got and make sure that they're covered, whether that's by transitioning into a three at the back, whether it's by making sure you've got two strong athletic midfields, which might be the best midfield in the division. They have got so much going for them right now and actually seem set up to have probably of those teams we've mentioned who might be thinking, actually, there's a chance for us. I think they're probably the best set to take it on because the recruitment was spot on. They've got a manager who's done promotion from this division before, and they've got a style of play that just looks like it will transition to any game perfectly. I see them as a huge threat. I think they're going to be right up there come the end of the season. They're the team that I would say from the start of the season to now, I see the biggest upside for them because they just look so solid.
Just to add to that, I think it's a fantastic point that Ollie raises there. I think Morrison Hackney, fantastic midfield pairing, and I would agree with Ollie, best in the division on early evidence. I also think Sammy Silvera doing so well as a left wing back. I had the Borough breakdown on the podcast for my summer deep dive in the summer, and the left wing back looked like an area where you kind of weren't sure, who was going to play there, and it looked like it was going to be defined by recruitment, and they have added someone. But I think Silvera, the fact that he's been retrained to play that position and contributed so much with his delightful ball carrying going forward, that makes a huge difference to a Rob Edwards system.
Really interesting position as well with Silvera playing down that left. We saw it the other day against United. It meant that they got so much width in terms of the strength that they got there. They've got players who can sort of pull out to the wing as well. I talked about Sonja Hansen there, who's somebody who can drift into that half space, drag out the defender, occupy the left back, and it just gives Silvera so much time and space to be able to get forward, and having two players who can hurt you is so strong. But we also saw how well that transitions to the new signing Matt Targett. If he's going to come in and it's going to be actually his position to lock down there, he looks solid, he looks strong, he can give other players that freedom. So it's almost as if they've got the perfect horses for courses set up. You can either use Silvera in the games you want to attack, you want to hurt, you're playing against a low block and you need the overload, use Silvera there, he's going to give you that 2-on-1 down that wing. Or the difficult games, Ipswich, for example, let's say away from home, you think, we're a bit worried about the wingers. Well, put Targett in there, we know how solid he can be, he's really going to lock you up. They seem like a team, again, they can transition to the opposition they're going to be playing against, and with a style of play that gives you that little bit of flex for individual players, it just feels like a really nice setup for where they are at the minute.
So positive about Borough, and I don't want you to be positive anymore, so we need to talk about Sheffield United, Ollie. You did a nice little tweet, didn't you, earlier, that I think we're going to put up on screen. So you said, I think this is now justification to sack Selles. That performance was pathetic, and it's embarrassing that this is what he's putting out on the pitch. What is he even trying to get his team to do? Owner's got lots wrong, but that today is entirely on this clown. How are you feeling 48 hours after that tweet?
48 hours after that tweet, I stand by every single word. He has set us up horrendously to attack this season. Now, I will start by saying I completely understand it's not all on him. Everything that's happened at the club this summer is on the owners. They have made an absolute dog's dinner of trying to get us ready for a championship season. They've thrown away a fantastic manager who got us competing well above our level, it turns out, having seen the squad actually play now. We've got sort of a connection between the fans and the club that has been torn apart. We've also seen key players depart and the recruitment come way too late. It's all loan signings, so we've got no long-term vision of what the club looks like. All of that is true. The owners have set Ruben Selles up to fail, but I mean, they're setting somebody up to fail, and there's them going, this is a bad hand, I'm going to play it even worse. The way I've been thinking about this, I was trying to describe it to somebody the other day, and I was like, quite like this as a metaphor. He's not been given the ingredients to make a steak, they've given him the ingredients for a fish finger sandwich. So why, instead of making a fish finger sandwich, did he chuck all the ingredients in the bin and burn his hands on an empty tray? It's just completely pointless what he's setting us out to do at the moment. He has got a team that is, yes, not a top 2 contender. We accept that. But we're not the worst team in this division, and we are playing like them. 2 away games, we've not had a shot on target. In just completely pathetic defeats at Swansea and Middlesbrough. At home, the way we collapsed against Bristol City was just beyond a joke, in all honesty. The best 45 minutes of this season was the first 45 minutes. We were losing 2-1 at half-time. The best we've played all season was a 45-minute game we were losing 2-1. That is as good as it's been. And so, no, it's not all on Ruben Selles, but he has to take the flak for it now because he is performing worse than I would say was even the possible worst-case scenario at the start. We've got no tactical style. We've got no thing that we're trying to implement. We were told it'd be a high press. We were told it would be attacking creativity. Everybody's going to be pressing forward, and if nothing else, we're going to make sure we attack the division. We scored 1 goal in 4 games. We had no shot on target in 2. We've played a game at home against Millwall where we genuinely could still be playing now, and I don't think we'd have scored. It is just pathetic what we're seeing week in, week out.
Is that justification to sack a manager after 4 games?
Yeah.
Is all of that, you've seen enough?
I don't understand how this manager would turn this around, because there's 2 really key elements to it for me. Have we seen progress in terms of a style of play being implemented that is seeing the club get better week on week? No, we've seen the opposite. We've seen them go from a team who were unbelievably well coached last season. You knew exactly what every player knew what their role was in the squad. As you watched this team on Saturday, every individual was lost. Nobody knew where they were supposed to be. We've got left back who was dragged out of position and neither was going forward and attacking to get balls in the box or to create, but also wasn't defending and holding his winger. We had central midfielders who are just consistently overrun. We have a defensive midfielder specifically signed to replace Vinny Souza, sat on the bench, just not playing. So instead, we've got the smallest midfield I think anyone's ever seen with Gus Harmer, Callum O'Hare, Sidney Peck. That's his choice. There is other options at the club to play. He's choosing not to. We've seen them get overrun in 3 out of 4 games. The only game the midfield wasn't completely overrun, Samare played, and we didn't play that 3 in midfield. He's making that decision to pick the squad there. We've also started to see that the confidence of the players is completely shot. Tyrese Campbell got the ball, middle of the box. Last season, that's a goal. This season, he couldn't even get it out of his feet. The players just look like they've lost it. And the second point here is the fans have gone. All the way through the second half at Borough, it was Chrissy Wilder and Alan Nilchance coming from the away end. When he came over at full time to clap, it was boos, it was you're getting sacked in the morning. He's got no connection with the fans, no connection seemingly with the players, and we can't see a tactical plan that is developing. So yes, it's very early, it's been 4 games, but to be honest, if it goes on too much longer, we'll be in a relegation battle, and that's just unacceptable from where we've started this season.
Gab, I think Erik ten Hag has been sacked by Leverkusen, which is just a couple of games into the season, so it is possible for clubs to do that. Obviously, Ollie's very emotional about this. What's your rationale as a neutral?
I wouldn't sack Ruben Selles if I was in the Sheffield United board's position, as much as I massively respect Ollie's opinion. I
don't respect yours.
I know, by the way, sorry to jump in there, that I know that the fans were really frustrated at full time.
Yeah.
But I think the players quite like him. From what I've seen and interacted, Callum O'Hare and Gustavo Hamer, I know Hamer may or may not be there at the end of the window, there's support around him. They were kind of trying to G him up a bit, or trying to G the fans up and get them on board. I don't think the players are necessarily against him.
Like if they could show that during the 90 minutes that mattered.
I think you put a dominant centre-half into the Sheffield United team, I still think you need an aerial I think Japhet Tanganga is a great signing.
He was superb, wasn't he? He was superb, by the way.
Yeah, for absolutely. I would bring in a destructive midfielder who with a bit of a footballing presence. Whether Samare can be that, I'm not sure. Certainly, but I would probably go for one more midfielder who can do a similar role if Selles for whatever reason doesn't like Samare. And I think to a certain extent, a little bit of it is about finishing. Now there have been periods of games like the first half against Bristol City, and like I would say elements of the game at Middlesbrough where you could see Sheffield United's pressing and it did force errors from the opposition. And I think that a bit more time for Ruben Selles to get his ideas across in a longer format, combined with those 2 or 3 additions that I've mentioned, combined with slightly better finishing, I think could turn things around. And I think if you're committing to a long-term vision, I don't think you make decisions after 4 games. I agree you'd like to see more signs at this point, but I think to make a decision after 4 games I think would be short-termist for a coach that's built up a fantastic career and done some fantastic work to get to this point over 20 odd years. I think he's a very good coach and I think he maybe needs a bit more time.
Do you think there's an argument to be made, by the way, that it's not been his squad? And obviously he's been left short in certain areas. I think Tanganga is a wonderful signing.
Yeah,
I think
agreed.
we saw at Middlesbrough how good he is.
The only one.
Danny Ings, he looked kind of bright off the bench, but I think there's a case to be made, and we are speaking just a few hours before the window closes, that a few more signings might see improvement.
A few more signings should see improvement, and we should get better the more that this squad is built. Very clearly the squad isn't good enough right now. We need a destructive midfielder. There's rumours that that's going to be Alex Matos coming in from Chelsea. He would make a big difference in terms of some of that dominance. Is he the exact player we need? I don't know. When I look at the system that we played the other day, the only midfielder who did any defensive duty was Sidney Peck. 1 out of 3.
And last season he had the support of Sousa alongside him.
Last season he played with Vinny Sousa. Can you ask, does it matter who the central defensive midfielder is if he's doing it on his own? If he's the only player? It's
strange, isn't it, that he's playing almost like a 4-1-4-1 with Peck holding and then O'Hare and Hamer as more attacking players when you could just bring Hamer back and play more of a 4-2-3-1.
We also play 2 attacking wing backs.
Yeah.
This is the problem, is that we're an attacking team who are out there to create chances, score goals. The whole promise is attacking football. We've got 3 players, I would say, on the pitch. Maybe 4 who have any kind of defensive mind on them. And so even when we win the ball with every player advanced in front of it, unable to receive it because they're just in the wrong position. Nobody knows where anybody else is going to be and there's no structure around it.
You get that system right and it can overwhelm opponents defensively. So I think the idea is that rather than like you had last season, the destructive element is the deeper midfield part. What Ruben Selles wants to do is to really engage from the front and be very aggressive, and that takes time because when you get it right that probably has a higher ceiling than what's possible under Chris Wilder, but when you get it wrong it looks a lot worse. I'll concede that, but therefore I think that means that the solution is time.
The solution might be time, but the question is, what do we want to be this season? Sheffield United are a parachute payment team in the Championship. We have one last season. This is our last year of parachute payments. From what I've seen of the owners, they've got no money. We've got nothing left. We haven't got any assets left to sell if Harmer leaves today. Maybe Harmer stays and we sell him with 1 year left on his contract next summer for a reduced fee. What are the assets to build this football club in a long-term future that's sustainable? The problem is, if we mess up this season, we lose parachute money, we don't have any assets left to sell on. How do you build a squad that's capable? So if the owners are saying, give him time, let's rebuild, let's see what it does, that's fine, but they need to come out with a clear vision to the fans that says, we're going to just be a mid-table Championship team, and that's all we're aiming for.
I would argue, though, that Selles has a track record of improving young players. You look at what he did at Reading, and also previously in his coaching career, he's developed young players. He got Reading, with all sorts of off-field problems that they had, into a playoff challenge in League One, with purely pretty much on youthful talent. So he can develop players, and he can nurture players so that they rise in value. And I think we need a bit more time to see that in full effect. And also on the parachute thing, that I think short-termism can be a slippery slope as well, because you can spend money that you don't have to try and achieve those short-term aims as if that's going to fix it, when maybe what the club needs is a more substantial rebuild, like what we saw with Norwich City in the late 2010s when they rebuilt under Daniel Farke, and it took a transitional campaign. Sometimes that can be what's required.
I think also Japhet Tanganga, and I'm coming back to him, he's an asset you've invested in who could be worth 20 million next summer in 2 years. He could be the best centre-back in the Championship.
He could. There's definitely a chance. He looks to be a class above anything we've had. He's been the player I've been screaming for United to sign since Harry Souttar did his ACL on Boxing Day last year. He is somebody who marks a change in what we've done in terms of the way that we've recruited and what the rest of the summer has happened. There has been some messaging that in the last 10 days of this transfer window, things have changed a little bit. There are rumours, like I say, that Alex Matos might come in permanently. We've signed Japhet Tanganga. We've looked at older, more experienced players like Danny Ings. That suggests there could be a thought process, there could be a change to what we're doing. But at what point does that actually kick into who we're going to be? Tanganga could be a £20 million asset, but also he this summer was available very cheap for Premier League teams to come in and pop his release clause. Nobody did. He's 26 now, he's getting better, he's getting older. There is a question mark around how much value he's going to retain over time. Yes, he could be one who we can sell and a £20 million asset who might then give us funds to reinvest, but there's also a chance that he stays with us for 5 years. I'd love that. I'd rather him stay. I think he's fantastic. But there's got to be a question about what he's going to fund the club at this point in the next 12, 18 months if we're writing this season off, which I think we would have to do to give Selles the time he needs.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, because I'd be much more confident that you'd have hit the ground running if you'd kept Wilder in.
Yeah.
And maybe at that time, maybe that would have been the simpler solution. But I would still argue for developing players is the route forward to financial sustainability. And again, I think that takes time.
It does, and there is an element to that, and yeah, if we do that, we get our player trading right, we develop some of our youth players that come through the academy, there's a potential there that provides a long-term future. I don't see how that provides us a route. We've had 5 consecutive... This is the thing. 5 consecutive seasons we've either been in the Premier League or getting parachute payment money. Would you look at United's squad and tell me that you think it's anything like what it should be after that period of time? In terms of what we've thrown away, the opportunity that we've had in the palm of our hands that we've thrown away, that's not all on this ownership, that's not all on Ruben Selles. It goes back a long time, affects numerous different people. Chris Wilder himself has to take a lot of the blame in terms of some of the recruitment we've got wrong and some of the different decisions that have been made. But we can't really, as a club, just say, well, actually, we've got this one wrong. Let's just let it play out a little bit longer, see if it turns around, see how long that can run for, because we've not got any evidence or any proof that Selles might be able to develop our young players into talent. But what I've seen is Sidy Peck looks significantly worse than he looked this time last year. Femi Sariki has been dropped from the team in terms of where he's coming at and looking at the development around that. We don't know what Ollie Arblaster's level is going to be when he comes back from his injury and whether or not he's going to come into the first team or where he's going to fit within some of United's wider plans. Selles hasn't demonstrated to us at the minute that these players are going to flourish. What he's actually done is sent Sidy Peck out for 4 consecutive games to just get battered. Like, he's actually actively put him in a terrible position for his long-term development and his role in this squad right now. He has built a midfield that is dysfunctional, that puts all the weight on Sidy Peck's shoulders for our defensive problems, and then Sidy Peck takes the blame for it when everyone goes, well, he's not doing his job. Well, he can't. He's marking 4 men at once.
So my final question on this to you is, will Chris Wilder come back? Would he come back?
No.
And would you have him back?
I thought, and go back and check, I'm fairly consistent on this, I thought it was the right time to move on from Chris Wilder. I'm not saying he's the answer. I'm not saying we should have kept him this summer. There were warning signs the back end of last season that we were regressing a little bit as a team. There was also the antics and everything that went on around the game at Plymouth, Oxford, and there were some difficulties there. I thought it was probably the right time as a club that we need to move on from just being Chris Wilder FC. That isn't always going to work. At some point, you do need to be something different. This isn't it. I don't think he would come back. And to be honest, given the state of the club right now, if he did come back, I don't know how that plays or what happens. I think it probably is still time to look at different options, but I think there has to be an acceptance that either you come out as owners and you communicate to the fans, yeah, you're right, we're not going to get promoted this season. We think Ruben Selles is going to build for 18 months.
No, you can't, as a footballer, you can't put a statement out going, we're not getting promoted this season.
But they might as well if they keep Ruben Selles in charge. This season,
It's too early to
does
say
not
that.
go
Ollie.
there.
It's 4 games in. There's 42 games left.
There's 42 games to go, and we yet to do anything. Never mind. It's not even. Look at the clubs in this division, and I hate to use them as the example. It makes me feel physically sick that I'm about to use them as the example, but I will. Look at what's going on at Sheffield Wednesday. Everything off the pitch. Look at the squad that they've got available to them. At Leicester, they put up in a massive fighting performance that gave the fans something to believe in and said, yeah, you know what? This squad ain't good enough, but we're going to fight for it. They're going to believe in it. They went to Wrexham, came back, fought for it, believed in it. There's a real feeling that their manager is getting more than the sum of their parts. You look at United, we're getting so much less than the sum of our parts. It's painful to watch.
Leicester have still got 9 players from the Championship title-winning squad of 23-24, plus Yeremy Monga and Kalle Bekoli, where Sheffield United have had an exodus of about...
Sorry, the example I was talking about was Wednesday's performance that day, in terms of how they went forward.
Right, yes, I see
and
what
so
you mean.
Wednesday are competitive with a manager getting the most out of a unbelievably depleted squad.
Yeah.
We are a team with a squad that, okay, I don't know who would argue that we're one of the best in the league. You wouldn't. But it's not a bad squad. It's top 10, top 8, top 6.
But the question
we're playing like a bottom team.
The question I would ask though, Ollie, is whether 4 games is the correct time to take stock of all that. I think you have to get to 10 games before you can really take stock of what you've seen.
But after 10 games, the season is written off.
No, it's not. Coventry have started seasons where we've been in the bottom 3 after 10 games and made the playoffs. It's not written off.
Well, you changed manager and got better.
Sometimes we didn't change manager. Anyway. Any final thoughts on Sheffield United? I'll let you have a 30 seconds to say exactly what you want to say.
Look, it's been a really tough start to the season. I think we've got to change. I think something has got to be done. I think the reaction of the fans at the game against Middlesbrough probably meant it was untenable for Selles to continue. There is some rumours and suggestions that the owners are starting to listen to that point of view. I think the next game after the international break is Ipswich away. That's horrendous for Selles if he is still in charge. That then brings us to 5 games potentially without a win and a really unbelievably toxic atmosphere at Bramall Lane for Charlton at home. If Selles is still in charge, Sky cameras might want to get themselves there, because I think that'll be really interesting in terms of how the fans react, in terms of how that starts to develop for us as a club. That's one of the things that's most concerning, is if you give him time, he has to get it right very, very quickly. Otherwise, it's very difficult to see how the owners get the fans back on board, never mind just the manager.
Thank you very much, Ollie, for that. Obviously, we've got no games coming up this weekend due to the international break. So instead, our final part, we're just going to discuss a few of the key transfers that have already happened in the Championship this season. And I think the most eye-catching one, Gab, Marcelino Nunes swapping yellow for blue in East Anglia.
Yeah, I think from Norwich's point of view, I have quite an unpopular opinion on this, which is that it was the right decision to sell him for £7.5 million plus, rising possibly to £10 million. I think for a player that's been offered new contracts twice and hasn't shown an interest in signing a new deal, who's out of contract next summer, who missed parts of last season actually through injury, and in some eyes was inconsistent when he was on the pitch. I think 7.5 million to 10 million is a huge amount of money. Now, I really do understand the emotional aspect, the history and intensity of the rivalry, where there's so much strong feeling in that East Anglia, in that part of the world. So I do understand why fans have reacted badly to it and why it's been taken that way. But I also think that this shows that Ben Napper has the presence of mind to make tough, unpopular decisions that are ultimately right for the long-term vision of the football club.
I completely understand the emotional aspect of it as well, but I think it's too much money almost to turn down. I'm almost surprised, though, that there wasn't more clubs in for him. That at that fee that they could have just said, oh, we'll take 6 million from Sheffield United for him. You know what I mean? Something like that, where they could have just made it a bit easier for themselves. Because this is, I can't wait for Derby Day, basically. It's going to be huge, the signing announcement. Absolutely chaotic. What do you make of it?
I am so upset that the first derby of the season's not at Carrow Road, because that would have been incredible to have that happening so early in the season after this. I agree with Gab. I think there's obviously 2 sides to this one, where off the pitch, take the emotion out of it, it's a fantastic deal for the club. Like, you've got to think about that sort of trading model that Norwich have tried to put in place in terms of some of their recruitment. This is a fantastic deal that gets them money in to reinvest, to look at the signings they've already made this summer and go, yeah, we're covering a lot of that sort of excellent business that we've done so far. But as a fan, you would be absolutely raging, wouldn't you? I can completely see where that's coming from. But I agree, they surely must have been thinking, please, anybody else come in, we'll even take the hit on, like you say, 1 million, 1.5, and let him go somewhere else, because, yeah, PR-wise, it's not ideal.
It's not ideal at all. Gab, I want to talk about Wrexham as well, because they've made quite a few interesting signings. Callum Doyle and Kiefer Moore, I think, in particular. Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on Kiefer Moore as well. They also look like they might be signing Coventry captain Ben Sheaf on transfer deadline. That deal's in the works as we're recording. They're making moves, aren't they? They're making moves that maybe we thought they would do at the start of the summer, leaving it late. Yeah,
they did take a while to get going in the window, but now the wheel seems to be in motion, so I would expect an active deadline day for Wrexham. I think Kiefer Moore's been outstanding for me so far. I think that he's quite a unique centre forward and then it's not easy to find. I think for a direct team, you kind of live and die by the quality of your centre forward and whether they can be that focal point, that target man. And if you've got someone who's strong in the air, that's great. If you've got someone who's strong in the air and is also mobile and can hold the ball up and is good in the link-up play, that can really transform a solid team into a good one. And I think Kiefer Moore's done that. And I think going forward, although Wrexham have only taken 4 points from their first 4 games, they've always looked like they can create chances going forward, even away at Southampton, for example, on the opening day, where for 70 minutes they were arguably the better team. So I think Kiefer Moore and Lewis O'Brien were fantastic additions.
I'm absolutely being trolled by the footballing gods. I just know I am. Like, I can see it happening in front of me. You've got Kiefer Moore bagging goals left, right and centre. Even Rhian Brewster's scoring goals. I mean, someone's laughing at me. But Kiefer Moore is the perfect signing, I think, for Wrexham. He is one of those players who comes in, who fits their system just perfectly so that they can get the most out of him. You can see that in his goal contributions so far. You can see that in the way that he's leading them forward. I think he even won the penalty, obviously, on the opening day against Southampton. He has contributed so well for them that he has just fit perfectly, that he never did at United. But we never played to his strengths. He took the blame for so much of what happened last season, took the blame for what happened at Wembley, took the blame for not getting as many goals as he should have done. But we never gave him a chance. We were expecting him to play like Tyrese Campbell, and that is just never going to be Kiefer Moore's game. And so he would be perfect for us this season. As somebody else to come in, if he wanted to transition to 2 up front, he could play that partnership. If he wanted something different off the bench when it's just not working, he would be ideal. The fact that we've not replaced him is one of the key parts why you start to look at our squad and think, I don't know how we change it, because his profile is so different to so much else that you see in the Championship at the moment, and he's ideally situated for Wrexham. I wish we'd kept him. I can understand why we didn't. We made money on an older striker where it just hadn't worked, but it's frustrating.
It's football, isn't it? And the last team I kind of want to talk about, by the way, Sportsman Extra later in the week, coming out on Friday. We're going to do our top 10 Championship transfers of the summer, so make sure you stick around, like and subscribe to make sure you catch that video when it goes up. The last team I want to talk about, Gav, though, is Southampton, because they bought in Finn Azaz and Tom Fellows in particular. Obviously got big money for Fernandez. What do you make of those signings in terms of Championship quality?
I think they bring creativity. That's the big thing that I think Southampton were possibly missing, certainly in their first 2 games against Wrexham and Ipswich. I think Fellows is a very direct winger. I was listening to the lads at Albion Analysis who are actually a little bit surprised that maybe Premier League clubs didn't come in for Tom Fellows, given his output last season and his growth potential. But maybe there's a feeling that he's a bit of a throwback in terms of an old-fashioned winger. But that possibly works in Southampton's favour and allows them to get a player of his quality. And then Finn Azaz, I absolutely loved when available for Middlesbrough last season. So I think he's going to be one of the most creative players in the league. So 2 additions that bring Southampton plenty of creativity.
Is that what a relegated Premier League team should do?
Yes. 100%. That's the right kind of business. Now, I love Tom Fellows. I think it's a fantastic addition. I think it's so cheap at the cost as well. I thought he would be going for much more than that as a young English winger, proved himself already in the Championship, so many assists and goal contributions last season. You've got to think that they've got an absolute steal there in terms of the money and the way they've brought him in. I think he's going to be fantastic, a huge addition for them. I actually disagree a little bit on Finn Azaz. I I think he's a luxury player that might work out perfectly, but I think there's too many games where he's anonymous. I think I was talking to some Borough fans about this, obviously, before our game last week, and one of the things they said was that for the fee, they're delighted in terms of the deal. You know, they've turned him around with a huge profit on what they signed him for. I think it was just 12 months ago, 18 months ago that they brought him in. They think that's a fantastic turnaround, but also the other side of it is, I think most of his goal contributions, assists, goals, all come against bottom half teams. It's very rare that he's contributing and impacting games at the top end in the Championship. And so whether or not he's able to step up and really be what Southampton need, I think is going to be really interesting.
One big factor for me, though, there, Ollie, is the coaching of Will Still, which I think is going to be different to Michael Carrick. I think Will Still's going to be more demanding of his team in terms of aggression against the ball. So Finn Azaz is going to have to up his game.
Yeah.
But on the good side of that, there's going to be players around him that are going to be doing more, which might free him up a bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. But technically, in possession, creatively, is he good enough to create chances for Southampton? The answer is yes.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Gab, for joining me as always. Ollie, thank you for your thoughts. We're out of time, unfortunately, on this episode of the Sportsman title, but do like and subscribe and get your comments in down below. Your thoughts on Sheffield United. Should they sack Ruben Selles or should he stay? We'll be back on Friday with our top 10 Championship transfers video, but for now, we'll see you next time.